Hello, good morning.
Morning,
Good
Commissioner
morning.
Coy.
Good morning.
And Commissioner Coy, we have you online as well as Commissioner Mohammed and Commissioner Reed.
Wonderful. That is all that I'm anticipating. I do not believe we'll have Chair Roberts on the call today, but did talk with her this morning, and I'll be helping things move along the agenda.
Sounds good. Thank you.
We'll give another minute though before we get going here. And Dr. Judkins, do we have the relevant folks from City Schools staff side? Is there anybody that we're waiting on there?
Let me check. I know Jonathan is not going to be joining us, so he would, but I know he sent the invite to folks. So let me just double check.
And recognizing that it is a little bit of an upside down day today with the virtual employee and school closures.
It definitely is. Yes. Let's see.
And perhaps all the more relevant that we're talking about the technology plan.
Very important. And Tanisha, feel free to jump in if you are also checking for staff and who is available.
So if we're all ready, I'm ready for us to get going if folks are ready.
Yes, I'm here for athletics. We're kind of rescheduling everything that was supposed to happen today.
Thank you. Yes, we can
Good
get
morning,
started.
Dr. Duckins. I am here.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Dr.
Commissioner
Judkins,
Coy.
this is Chris Doherty. Are we looking for anybody on my staff that I can help with?
Chris, this is Marianne Cox. Cindy Smith is on the call, and she and I will be talking about the 2 supplemental appropriations.
That's what I figured. I just didn't know whether there was anyone else that we were trying to track down, and I just hoped it wasn't anybody.
Yeah, not that I'm
Technology.
aware of.
Well, let's go and get started, and then if there is somebody that needs for one of the specific items, at that point we can address it. But I'd like to welcome everybody to the Operations Committee meeting here for January, a snowy day where schools are closed and staff are reporting virtually. Appreciate the ability to have this meeting virtually, and thank you, Commissioner Reed, Commissioner Mohammed, for joining alongside board office staff and district staff. We'll go ahead and get started. The agenda is I imagine, a lighter agenda than is may otherwise be sometimes. But I guess one question that I have at the top of the call, just so I have an orientation for this, Dr. Judkins, do we have any prior public comment signups at this point?
I know we had a couple for today. Tanisha, can you remind me? Do we have one particularly for this meeting, or is it policy?
It was policy. We
That's
don't
what I
have
thought.
today. Yes.
All right, thanks. No, we do not, Commissioner Boy.
Okay, I appreciate just knowing that here at the top as we budget our time accordingly. So going into the agenda, the first time on the agenda, although I know on occasion there are some additional items, but I will turn it over to start us off to the technology update team that has a presentation prepared.
Sorry, I was muted. Excellent. Thank you so much, Commissioner Coy. My name is Maxim Lapushin. I'm the Special Assistant for the Office of Information Technology, and I'll go ahead and share my screen, and we can start our presentation. Okay. Excellent. Okay, is everybody able to see it?
Yes.
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 Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. So this is the annual technology update that the Office of Informational Technology does to keep everybody abreast of our projects and accomplishments so far. All of the activities within the Office of Information Technology, we work to align with district priorities. One of our goals is to have modernized resources via priority number 3, to work to have equal access to resources in alignment with priority number 5, and to ensure that equity and all of our policies and practices work along district priority number 7. Yes. Additionally, the Office of Information Technology, our vision for the district is to be a leader and a trusted advisor and partner for all technology services. Our goal is to push, to walk alongside the different departments to ensure that we have 21st century global learners and leaders. We work diligently to be customer oriented because we know that through technology and innovation, we can work to reimagine our educational landscape. I'll go ahead and now pass it to our Executive Director of Infrastructure and Cybersecurity, Mr. Elvis Tia.
Thank you, Max. Good morning, everyone. So we've done a lot of work in terms of our infrastructure from a wired to the wireless perspective. So we've upgraded all of our wireless our wired infrastructure within our city schools as well as headquarters. One of our greatest win was our recent update to our headquarters itself, because for the past 10 years or so, we've never had the opportunity to upgrade the infrastructure at our headquarters. We were able to do that. We were also able to successfully complete the wired and switch upgrade of all of our schools, all of our cities, all of our traditional city schools within the district. From a wireless perspective, we also replaced all of the wireless access points, because if you can recall, prior to COVID, we didn't have a lot of mobile devices. Now, most of our devices are wireless devices. So that means our students can now move from one location to other locations within the school in any collaborative space for that matter, and still have full access to the wireless network. Our backhaul connectivity, meaning our internet speed. So prior to COVID, I would say 3 years prior to COVID, we started to work on upgrading our speed because we saw the future. Our elementary schools used to be about 100 megs, which was because we didn't have a lot of devices in the school, so it wasn't a major issue. But right after we began to have a lot of devices, we had to upgrade all of our schools. So all of our schools now are 10 gigs, means 10 times the speed it used to be. If it was 100 megs, that means it's about 100 times the speed it used to be. When we did that, we also had to make sure that our internet access was proportional to the amount of bandwidth we allocated to the schools. So we had to increase our internet speed at headquarters, which is all of our schools' internet traffic aggregate at our headquarters. So we had to upgrade our speed to 40 gigs. It used to be 8 gig right after COVID, then we moved to 20. Now we are at 40 gigs, meaning we are about 400 times what it used to be prior to COVID. With this amount of speed, students are able to work in a hybrid environment, as well as if we go full virtual, or if we are to work from within the schools. In short, we are ready in whatever capacity when it comes to internet access for our students. Next. So we had a robust connectivity program, meaning, as I said previously, our network, if you can see the chart on the screen, we had our devices about 5 to 9 years old. Some of them were 10 years and more than that. Our wireless was not up to date, but this chart is just to show that we've moved on. So our HQ network has been upgraded 100%. Our school wireless has been upgraded 100%. And our school switches, the back-end devices that accommodate all of those wiring that comes from the classroom, we also replace those devices.
Yeah, and this is Chief Jones. I just want to add that last part Elvis just said is massive. We have always, the team have always prioritized schools, and they got all the switches. The very thing that control the wireless, they've always prioritized school. This year, we were finally able to upgrade central office as well, which, I mean, from switches that were 15 years old. It's so a big deal. All right, Elvis, back to you.
Yep. And then from a cybersecurity perspective, so it's funny to say, I just had a conversation with my chief this morning about cyber attacks. So we've been getting attacks, and the number has been increasing because, you know, the more devices you get, the more attacks you get, right? So it's proportional to the amount of users you have, your user population. So if you can see for FY23, we have 2.5. We FY24, we're not 100% yet, but we 3.7 million inbound attacks. So that's the struggle we go through. The attacks keep coming in. They keep trying different forms just to make sure they can get in. And another thing, the amount of reconnaissance we get, because they do reconnaissance first before the attack. So we also study to make sure that when they try to come in to do reconnaissance on the kind of resources we have, our infrastructure and all of that, we keep track of that too, because this helps us anticipate the kind of attack that we are about to receive. Then the infiltration attempt. So we have about 219,000 infiltration attempts so far. We've blocked all of them, and thanks to Homeland Security, because we work closely with them. Most of the work we do, they evaluate our work. As a matter of fact, they do every week they play the game of the bad guys, meaning they come in to attack us, and then if they see any vulnerability, they create a ticket and give us a time frame to make sure that has been resolved. Based on our report card, I think we are in a very good standing. We have nothing critical, nothing high. We are in a very good place. Talking about suspicious activity, also we keep track of that, because there are some false positive, but there are also a lot of positives, right? Because, you know, we have a lot of students and students are curious. That's the most curious population when it comes to internet users, right? So they do everything they can. They click on anything they think that they can click on. They don't care because they're curious. They want to see what happens. So there's a lot of work we have to do also to make sure we control what they can access, as well as if any hacker or anybody with a fraudulent attempt tries to access our resources, we are in the position to defend ourselves. We've been doing it for years, and I think, I'm not trying to pat us on the back, but I think we're getting good because our teacher, who's Homeland Security, is telling us that we're doing a good job, and we hope, knock on wood, we stay in that capacity. Malicious email, that's the one that keeps coming, especially when it comes to unsolicited emails. So what the hackers do, they keep track of whenever there's an event going on with city schools, they keep track of that, and they try to use the opportunity as well to get to our users. So we have to keep track of what emails go out, what emails come in. So sometimes we get dinged by our senior officials, especially the chief, some of our chiefs, because they don't get certain emails. Sometimes it may be that some of our commissioners may not get certain emails. It's because of the way our system is set up. Our system is set up in a way where if we don't trust something, we don't let it in, unless we talk to someone who confirms that it is trustworthy, and then we do the evaluation, and then we allow it to come in. So this is just a quick summary from our cybersecurity perspective. There are a lot of things we can't say here. We have a close, and the chief is working on us having a closed session with the board to be able to explain more, but from a security perspective, this is where we are.
Hi, good morning. My name is Alan Russell, the Director of IT Technical Support and Customer Experience. I want to talk to you about share the one-to-one device strategy. The one-to-one device strategy started right after the pandemic. And the reason for that is to provide equity to our students and teachers. Because of the one-to-one device strategy, we had the opportunity this summer to do a full-blown inventory of our schools, approximately 128 schools, that to go in and inventory the devices, cart devices as well as student devices. And what we found out, we inventoried a little over 37,000 devices. And we collected a little over 8,000 devices and brought them back to central office to be triaged. Because of that, we were able in the first 2 to 3 weeks of school to distribute it over 25,000 devices for that first month of school. Also, as a result of that, we were able to deliver 20% of devices for carts to be used in carts. And as you can see today, it's paying off because we are able to feel that we are in a really good space for virtual learning due to inclement weather, which we're experiencing today. We also was able to provide student device requests to 2 to 3 days turnaround. As you can see, we had over 662 requests, totaling over 8,000 devices, and we were able to deliver those devices within a 3-day period. Doing that, and because of that, we no longer require parents or teachers or students to even come to North Avenue to pick up devices. We feel very confident, and this was all because of the partnership that we had with the principals, ILEDs, and also other administrative staff. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Swapner.
Before Swapner, before you jump in here, go back one, Max. Just really quickly, I do want to highlight something that's really important on the screen. Alan said it, but I want to drive it home. That last point, there is no longer a need to come to North Avenue. We have been working with principals and teachers. Teachers and principals were picking up devices, bringing them to North Avenue themselves versus being in the schools. We have partnered with all the people Director Allen said, as well as with transportation, who has provided us with vehicles. And our team now no longer has to put the stuff into their own personal cars and try to drive around. We take vans provided by the transportation department, and we go to the schools. So we keep our educators in the schools. Go ahead, Swapna.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Swapna Dighe. I'm Director of Applications Development at City School. As you all know, we are working on administrative modernization project, and it is a multi-year project. So we are partnering with Offices of Finance and Human Capital, and we already completed phase 1 finance in July 2023 as planned. Currently working on resolving some of the issues, and also started working on phase 2, that is budget, and phase 3, human capital and payroll, which also includes electronic timekeeping system. Installation of time clocks has already started in some of the schools. Addition to this, we are also evaluating performance management system and for mid 2024, and as well as learning management system. So that is what I have. Thank you. I will turn it to Max.
I'd just like to, oh, yes, Chief.
Let me just get in. Sorry, just want to real quickly. Just want to make a quick note. I think the commissioners are all aware of, but I just want to say it out loud. This project, the finance, budget, human capital, project, performance management, and learning management is about 5 to 6 times larger than any project we have ever undertaken at City Schools. It is not a trivial project. We do not claim that things have been perfect. We have had ups and downs, twists and turns, but we are making steady progress. The team is doing an amazing job. And when I say the team, I'm not talking about just OIT. I am talking about finance, HC, all of these teams that had all of the ESSER work laid on top of putting in this size project. So I have to give them, the whole team, OIT, finance, budget, human capital. They have just done a yeoman's job of taking this work on and fighting through it. So I'd be remiss if I didn't give that credit. Go for it, Max.
I'd like to discuss our technology footprint at City Schools. Year over year, we continue to increase the amount of technology that the Office of Information Technology supports. As you can see, access points, we've increased them by 150%. This is critical for the over 60,000 Chromebooks that we support that students use daily. Additionally, we support more phones and audiovisual equipment and over 160 schools and programs. So while our user base may have remained steady, our user base uses more technology year over year. Applications, and if you see that in the bottom right, one of those I would probably the one that you guys have heard of, one of the biggest ones, right, is our move using in the administrative modernization program for AMP moving to Oracle Fusion. So while we've increased that applications by 27%, that may not really provide the full scope of the necessary support that those applications require. So people are using more online applications, and OIT is proud to be able to work hand in hand with them. I'll pass it over now to Chief.
So just a real quick summary. I just want to say, looking forward to 2024. We are working very hard to get an enhanced asset management system to track all this technology, to deal with audit concerns, and just to be great stewards of what we're doing. We are looking to modernize our ticketing system. Any of you have used the decades-old HEAT system, you know the complaints that we get about those. We are looking to modernize that, and not just modernize it from an OIT perspective, but pull in all of the groups and get their input about what we need to change. How can we make it easier, quicker, more thorough? And for me personally, how can we track the work that OIT does? Because I just have to be, I'm shamelessly make a plug for the sheer volume of work this team is doing, and I want some proof of it. So we're looking to do that. We are continuing the administrative modernization for another 3 years. And one big thing, Apple devices have just grown leaps and bounds. So we're working with Apple. In fact, we have Apple out next week to really look at an enterprise management of all these Apple devices, because there's no longer just a Windows world. Next slide, please. So to summarize, we have completely replaced our wireless and wired infrastructure in headquarters and schools. A big achievement I give credit to the team for. We have achieved our device one-to-one strategy. We have 100% of our students assigned. Doesn't mean they all have it in their hand because some of them are broken and they're back being repaired, but effectively you have 100% assigned. And we have 20% in the cart. So if there's a testing issue that comes up, or it's not really a replacement issue, but if a student happen not to bring it in today, that will not be a reason that they cannot participate technologically in what's going on. And then our partners, which I can't say enough about, finance and human capital. We've launched, phase 1, now on to phase 2. Next slide. So that wraps up our presentation of some of the things that we've gotten done in the past years. We are going to open up the floor for any questions, comments, clarifications, whatever might be needed. And thank you for your time.
I'll be the first just to say thank you for the presentation here and for all the work that it represents. Commissioners Reed or Commissioner Mohammed?
Hey, Chief Tommy, how are you?
I'm doing fine, Commissioner Reed. How are you?
Good. We talked about this in the past. We had, I guess, during COVID, we had a lot of devices that were lost or not returned.
Right.
I know that was a big hit for you in terms of costs because you had to replace those.
Yes.
So what's our dynamic in terms of, a kid losing their device, be it stolen, given away, them getting a device on one side, but making sure that we don't have too much slippage in terms of losing too many devices?
Yeah, well, then thanks, Commissioner Reed, for asking the question. I'm really proud of the team. We have about a 33% return rate. So when a device is broken and comes back into us, a third of those we are repairing and putting back out in the field. So that cuts down on that slippage rate. We have a few kids that we're trying to deal with administratively who are breaking devices, multiples. And so we're trying to really hone in on this issue of how many. We basically, in those cases, the principals, and we leave it up to the principals. This is not a technology issue. We have to be very careful where we know where our lines are in terms of what our responsibilities are, or even our authority. But we give guidance about how many. We expect over a 3-year life of a device, a child may break one, some small key broken, or that type of thing. Those things we're getting repaired. And now Director Allen and his team, we just reported to MSDE just in November that we have, Allen, don't let me go wrong. If you count the true break, you broke it, I think it's around 10%. Right, but then when we take we grab them and fix them and put them back into service, that takes us down to the 7, right? What'd it say?
No, it breaks down to 7. That's correct.
About 7%, which 7%, when you talk about 100,000 devices, we think honestly it's doing pretty good. So it's not out of control, and we do have numbers that we can, provide and so forth.
So the kids are doing okay. I mean, they're not missing anything by not having systems.
No, they're not missing anything. The biggest problem we have had from day one and still have, it is a thorn in my side, Commissioner, is there are tools available to let us track exactly where devices are, and we've only been able to make limited use of those. The number one, Director Allen will tell you, the number one thing I ask him about 3 times a week is where is that contract? Because we have a vendor who can provide that capability, and that is like, we are dying to get our hands on that so that we can tell a principal, okay, Johnny said they don't have it today. Well, we can tell you where it is. So I wish I was hoping to come to this meeting today and tell you we had it in place. We don't, but we are working through all the contract issues, legal, all the things that we have to go slow about, because think about it for just 2 seconds and you'll smile right away. When we talk about tracking a kid, we're talking about a child's information. And so the security behind that, as you're nodding your head, I know you know what I'm talking about. We have to be extraordinarily careful about how we roll that out. But I am so hopeful that by the end of this month or in February at the latest, we will have that ability, which I think will up our accountability 3 or 4 fold. Because now a principal can actually talk directly to a family and say, here's what Johnny says, but here's the reality of the device.
And great job of getting the slippage down to 7%. That's a great job. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Other questions?
Appreciate it. You actually just addressed my concern with regards to security. So
I was reading your mind. I was reading your mind.
I appreciate you going there. I'm good. Thank you.
All right. Others?
I do have a question or two, as you might anticipate and imagine. One of my first question that I'll ask is, how does city schools, see its role in relationship to the broader digital equity efforts of either Baltimore City or the state of Maryland?
So, Commissioner Coy, we've had this conversation before. This is a personal thing with me. I don't believe it's all about technology. Technology is only one piece. It is about the education that families get. But I thought I could work on that right away. We as OIT could work on that right away. We worked on it a little bit, but not a lot. And that's because we found out that the issue of just simply getting the technology in place was pretty massive. But now that we're doing that, we are participating both with the state and the city and the Digital Equity Coalition. If I were to give myself a grade on this, because I take this on personally, it would be a D at best, because I've been working so hard on trying to get the devices themselves in place. But now that we have that pretty much in hand, we want to now start working much more aggressively with other organizations to get the educational part in hand, which will make such a big difference in terms of how do we actually deal with the divide, as opposed to just give a thing to a family. So I have to give myself a D. I'm hoping next time we talk next year, I can at least give myself a B. But it's only, it's technology, yes. Education, no.
Yeah, well, and some additional questions related to this, and then, circling back to this broader question, what information and insights do we have as city schools about the digital connectivity or lack thereof of our students and families?
We don't have a tremendous amount. So first, I'm gonna get myself in trouble and make a statement that's Tommy Jones alone, not representative of Baltimore City Public School Systems. But I'm trying to get us out of the connectivity business. It's not a business that the school system needs to be in. We had to be in. We were forced into it during the pandemic because we had to get our kids educated. Right now, we have 12 or 15,000 devices out there, and we have more that are still part of T-Mobile's million plus program, where they will provide a device to a family for free that qualifies. So for everyone who is asking, we are covered. We have no unfilled requests. What I don't know is how many people aren't asking. And that's part of what the tracking software will tell me, is we can see the connectivity better and we can work on other people out there. Now, we are also promoting the Affordable Connectivity Program, and that's one of the goals for this coming year, is to work with the state and the city to also push that, because that's a great opportunity for people to get high-speed internet connectivity for free. So it's work undone, Commissioner Coy. I wish I could say we've done a better job, but it's work undone.
Yeah, I appreciate that response. Relatedly, but distinct.
Okay.
What information and insights do we have as city schools about the digital skills of our teachers, staff, or administrators?
I'm afraid I can't answer that one, Commissioner Coy, but I will take it back to Dr. Dabrowski. I mean, we don't have teachers coming to us about struggle. I mean, one or two, of course, but not in volume. Now, just because they don't ask the technology group doesn't mean that they're really that proficient in it. So I don't have a good answer. I'll have to come back to you on that after talk to Dr. Dabrowski.
Yeah, no, well, and I'm asking these questions, you know, they're all connected. Again, going back to this, the first question also about how do we see our role in the relationship in this broader ecosystem, you know, and I think about the tremendous work that you've highlighted here with the AMP and the rollout of that, and also hearing back to what you had sort of outlined about the number of uses that are increasing, even if the user base is not changing. You know, thinking about one thing that I would encourage you, Chief Tommy, as you're leading the team, is to try to get this baseline understanding to say, this is what we believe. Even if I hear you on that, like your job is not to then solve all those problems, right? Like, you know, but they definitely are directly impacting how folks are interacting with the system that you are then responsible for. Either, you know, the risk factors of phishing attempts being, you know, more folks, you know, being susceptible to those, or, you know, or just using more devices, putting more of a load, and then being able to anticipate and plan for that rollout. I mean, this stuff I've seen you talk about over the past year and a half, and I appreciate how you've been approaching the work. One of the things that I would love to see, and this is again not saying that City Schools needs to solve all of the problems, and yet you all having insight to be able to say, this is the problem set that we are seeing. You know, this is the disconnectivity rate that's affecting our students. We are not an internet service provider. City Schools, that's not the business of City Schools. And yet on days like, well, I guess less today than if we had 2 more snow days, then we go to synchronous virtual, you know, and on those days, there will be a real disparity between students that have connectivity at home and those that don't, you know. And so while it's not our problem to solve, I do think that as City Schools, it is our problem to highlight or to have better insight, you know, and within limit, because, you know, these are endless rabbit holes that you can go down forever. But I would distinguish and say, understanding what we believe to be the digital connectivity and digital skill sets of our students and families, and then separately, what do we believe to be the digital skill set and connectivity of our staff and administrators? You know, and be able to say, like, these are things that directly impact the work that you and your team are doing, you know, and so having some way to sort of state this is what we believe that is, you know, I would find a lot of value in, and knowing that the at the state level and at the city level, there has never been as much attention, resources, you know, there from the bipartisan infrastructure package and all of these different things, the funding has been rolling down. It hasn't made it all the way out from some of those large investments, but Maryland is getting $780 million to help in internet connectivity from the federal government. And the question is, like, how are we at City Schools making sure that some of that is then benefiting our students, our teachers, you know? And part of, I think, the way that we do that is by knowing what we believe the problem set to be and saying, like, you know, pay attention to this, right? And that you all have to solve that. It's not City Schools, but I think we need to know what problems we believe exist and give voice to that. Otherwise, you know, I'm looking at in my day job, I'm looking at the state level and just not seeing very much come to Baltimore City, frankly, right? And I think as the City Schools could play a role in saying, we want our students to, you know, to benefit from these federal dollars. And if we don't know what the problem set is, then I just fear that we won't see the benefit that could come to our students. You know, so that's a little bit of the question of, like, how do we see our, and I know you've been at a number of these different conversations. So you're showing up, and I think what I'm asking for here in this context is, as you are thinking about your technology update, adding some ability to understand, describe, articulate, show what we believe the problem sets are that are facing our students and our staff, you know, in this issue of digital connectivity.
Yeah, well, Commissioner Coy, I think you you know already that I share that vision and the vision of the school board. The last piece, you know, when you're building a bridge, that is that last piece that's the hard piece. For us, this monitoring of the activity on the devices is the last Lego block we're desperately trying to get in place. And it's been a long, long journey to get it. I've been trying to get this done for over a year now since I've been here. So we agree. My whole team agrees with you. This is what we are desperately trying to get to, where we can help provide and guide those conversations about what is happening. And you bring up a really great point that very few people bring up. It's not just the students. It is the teachers. We have many teachers who can turn the technology on and go to the right screen. They don't necessarily know how to maximize the technology. You and I have been talking for 3 years now. You know, my thing is, like, for example, not many people, if you want to talk about the capitals of the world, you can take Google Earth and call up right now and see what's happening in the capital of Ukraine. It will tell you right on the machine. And not all of our teachers know that. So I came in here with that sort of a focus to try to do something about that, and realized that my technology problems were so bad. That's an excuse. I mean, I'm making an excuse, but do know we are focused on that. We are solving the technology problem now. Director Tia has got us a rock solid network in place. We haven't had a rock solid network in this place for at least 10 years and probably more. Director Russell is getting the things in place that lets us get the devices out to the students and the teachers. You know, Director Digay, I keep mispronouncing Swapna's name, is helping us get the systems in place. At the risk of sounding like I'm making an excuse, I will say one of the things that stunned me as someone coming into the school system, I did not know how much extra work ESSER was requiring of the teams, not just OIT, but the other teams that we work with and support. Just the workload. This is politically wrong to say, but now that ESSER is coming to an end, that may actually be a little bit of a break for us. I wanted to spend every single penny of ESSER. I'm also just a little bit happy that maybe we can catch our break and get a few things that we were trying to get done without killing people. But I share your passion, and we will work very hard by this time next year to be able to answer some of the questions you're asking and to do a better job of guiding the technology outlays of other groups that's helping our students.
Yeah, well, I think the fact that you have done so much, all of you, the whole team, and what you presented here have done so much to build out and build up is why these questions then can be asked, right? Because and so it is only because you have been successful in doing all of these different pieces that then the deeper underlying questions can start to become front and center. So I appreciate that and recognize the tremendous amount of work that you all put in to building out better systems and processes. So thank you for all of that. Any other questions, Commissioner Reed, Commissioner Mohammed?
Can I make just one last thing? Mm-hmm. I appreciate the Board of Commissioners here and in the form here of the Ops Committee acknowledging the amount of work that this team has done. It has most definitely not been a Tommy Jones show. It has been the folks that you've seen on the screen working many, many nights and weekends trying to get this done. So I appreciate the fact that you acknowledged it was the team. So thank you.
Well, and I even remember seeing those update emails where when other people are off, that is an ideal time to update systems. And so it is literally nights and weekends, that and days off that I know you and your team are in there working on things. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, sirs. Take care.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, we have supplemental appropriations 202 elevator projects.
Yes, good morning and greetings to the Ops Committee commissioners, cabinet members for city schools, the city school staff, and our community members who are attending. Executive Director Cindy Smith and I are going to be presenting information on the two supplemental appropriations that are submitted for review by the Ops Committee and then will later be submitted to the full board for their approval. Just a little information on supplemental appropriations. Supplemental appropriations per the requirements of Board Policy DIG gives the CEO the authority to place items in the general fund assigned fund balance for use at a later time. We only place items in our general fund assigned fund balance as we close the books for the year. So when we talk about transferring funds from the general fund assigned fund balance, that would be a transfer of funds that were placed there as we closed our FY 2023 books. So what happens is the CEO has the authority to place items in there, but when it's time to actually use the funds and transfer it to wherever it's going, whether it's the general fund or to the capital projects fund, we ask the board's permission to make that transfer. So we have two supplementals for review today. The first one is the air conditioning project. For the air conditioning project, the CEO authorized placing $5,225,000 in for the air conditioning projects in general fund assigned fund balance. Executive Director Cindy Smith is requesting a transfer to the capital projects funds of $5,146,000 for the specified projects that she noted in her support documentation. So Cindy Smith is going to walk you through this support documentation and also offer comments on the impact of these air conditioning projects and what it means for city schools as a whole. So Cindy, could you do that, please?
Good morning. So this set of air conditioning projects and this request will actually complete air conditioning in all of our buildings. So the goal would be that these would all be installed before April 15th so that when it is time to turn air conditioning on, we will be able to report that we no longer have any buildings without air conditioning. In teaching spaces, I just want to make sure that we are clarifying this is teaching spaces. There are still buildings that don't have air conditioning. In cafeterias, gymnasiums, auditoriums, we will go back and start cycling through that. But this will complete that governor's mandate that we were under and were put under several years ago to provide air conditioning in all of our buildings. So this will actually get us through that. You will note that some of these schools are actually going to be replaced or renovated. This gets air conditioning in those buildings until that renovation or replacement is done. The units that we're installing under this method will be able to be repurposed for other schools, other uses, if a piece of equipment fails, things like that. So this equipment is definitely more of a movable type equipment to be able to then move to something else should something fail. Any questions?
Commissioners Reed or Mohammed?
No, I'll defer until the next one comes through. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, Cindy, if you could put the agenda item for the elevator projects. For the elevator projects, again, the CEO, as the board's designee, placed $4.5 million in general fund assigned fund balance for use for the elevator projects. So that's what's on, and now we're going to ask the board's permission to move that money from the general fund to the capital projects fund where it is appropriately recorded as a capital project. So Cindy, could you put up the support documentation? Okay, these are the items. Go ahead.
So we're requesting a total of 10 elevators in 8 buildings. Baltimore School for the Arts has 3 elevators in it. These are all elevators that are failing, that are may not be eligible for capital because they aren't old enough, but the equipment is no longer in a condition where we can actually maintain it. So we are requesting these. In addition, 2 of them. One of them is in a building that is a district building, an admin building, so we wouldn't be able to use capital funding for that either anyway. And the other one, when we renovated Highlandtown 237 through the 21st Century Program, as you may recall, it was really a minor renovation in the main building and an addition. So in the main building, in the original building, the elevator was not replaced, and that elevator is beyond its life. That's actually more than 20 years. So we need to go ahead and get that elevator replaced. So this really hits a high need to be able to serve these multi-story buildings, as well as starts getting into the first of ones that may be eligible, but maybe further down the line, like Margaret Brent, because we have such high capital needs. The elevators tend to unfortunately fall a little ways sometimes after HVACs and roofs and things that are bigger. So this really starts to make a dent in our needs and being able to support our disabled staff and students in being able to ensure that they can get to their appropriate classrooms and spaces that they need to get to.
Okay, so are there any questions?
Yes. Thank you, ladies. This is much needed. We have to get this stuff done. The only way you can get the money quickly is through this appropriation. I guess my question is, I guess Chair McFadden brought up he had some concerns in the last board meeting. I know you ladies were there. That was about one of our appropriations. I guess my question here is, when we give out this $9+ million, how is it replenished and when? And I guess a greater question is, can you educate this whole group about the 3 to 7% rule in terms of that importance and how you use that in terms of your whole budget process?
Okay, so in terms of where does the money come from, essentially, fund balance is the excess of revenue over expenditures in the general fund on a cumulative basis. So each year we might add a slice, and then the slice will, for a particular year, can either increase the amount available or decrease the amount available. Please remember that the items in general fund assigned fund balance are reapproved every year. So once something goes there, if it's not spent or requested for transfer, it would be reevaluated in terms of the CEO priorities to determine if that should remain as a general fund assigned fund balance item. So I'm sorry, did you ask a question about how that corresponded to the range of general fund unassigned fund balance that we have? Okay, I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
You've articulated to me in the past.
Okay, so
we have to assign 3 to 7% of the budget to the fund balance. And I just wanted you to articulate that to the group.
Oh, certainly.
And if we spend this money, we still won't go below that 3%. I mean, that's.
Yes, yeah. Actually, and again, this is for compliance with board policy DIG. We have a range for unassigned fund balance. We have a target range of 3 to 5%. And if we fall below that 3%, finance must prepare a plan to get the unassigned fund balance back to 3%. So then we have another range from 3 to 7. So what happens is once you reach 7, according to the plan that we have now, then City Schools needs to look at it to disseminate some of that additional money over the 7% range for use for one-time projects. It's not for use as operational money. It's one-time projects like the elevators and the air conditioning units, those kinds of things. Were you looking for additional information to that?
Okay, again, what I'm saying is by spending this money, we're going to stay in the range.
Absolutely.
Okay.
When we spend this money comes from assigned fund balance. That range relates to unassigned. So there are two different pots in our fund balance. So yes, we will remain in our range. Correct, Chris?
Yes, I very much like that Commissioner Reed is aware of and focused on making sure that we don't dip below what we like to keep. And to confirm what you just said now, Mary Ann, these expenditures will be coming out of the assigned fund balance, where you have projects that are named, you have existing estimates, you intend to do them during the period in question, which is FY24. And the good news, Commissioner Reed, from a point of view of having reserves for what they're intended, we are a bit more than 6%. That range that Mary Ann mentioned that goes from 3 to 7. We are a bit over 6, and that's where we'd like to be. And these expenditures will not affect that.
I also saw Chief Brigginstone had a hand up, but it might have been answered.
Yeah, I think Chris pretty much addressed it. The only thing I just want to just clarify is that the funds that we took out last week for the health suites, for the university partnership with the health suites, those did come from the unassigned fund balance that's in that 3 to 7%. This comes, so that's unusual that we do that. We did that because we kind of have to cover those expenses in the short term while we're trying to get the payment from the city. This is the more normal use of the fund balance, is that when you have funds at the end of the year, we look at priority projects, like the fact that we have a backlog of elevators that need repair. And so, you know, with the resources we get from the state and the city, they are so small in comparison to the need that, you know, we don't get past the tip of the iceberg of boilers, roofs, and windows. That's all we can do with those funds. So things like elevators or fields, there are other things that just kind of keep getting put aside. And so we put some funds at the end of the year when we have funds left over, we try to put them in the assigned fund balance to try to chip away at some of those areas that, you know, the underfunding that we've had for 40 years just doesn't allow us to get to.
So how big is that? How big is the assigned balance?
About 83 million prior to the 5 million that Chief of Staff Perkins Cohen just mentioned. And Commissioner Reed, I remember your question about the unassigned fund balance one. And I think and Commissioner Coy might have raised it as well, and Allison answered it. But just to re-emphasize, that is a bit rarer. Assigned fund balance categories, they're much more common. We continue to expect to get repaid by the city for that amount. And we were, as we explained in the meeting, we couldn't wait any longer because activities needed to happen, and so we pulled it out. But we certainly don't view those funds as uncollectible or anything of that nature. We just think it's kind of a timing difference. So we continue to want to collect those funds and are working towards it. In both instances, we stayed above 6. So we were fatter, 6.4, I think 6.5, and then with the $5 million for the university partners, we went down to about 6.1. But we're still in that healthier range. For a while in the past, we've been 4%, and then we went up to 5%, and now we're, as I said, 6 and a little bit of change. And we just think that's particularly good. For, among other reasons, when we do our projections and find that future years in overall general funds are not going to be, or we predict they won't be as robust as we would all hope, that's another reason to keep your unassigned fund balance replenished. I recently read, for example, that Howard County has tapped all of its fund balance because of some layoffs that they're planning and some other things. And so it's something that staff keep their eyes on very closely.
Thank you. Any additional follow-up there, Commissioner Reed?
No, that was a great response. I appreciate it, everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Commissioner Mohammed, any questions?
No, I'm just always really interested in how we can ensure that we replenish the funds as we're using them. I think it was very well addressed, so definitely pleased.
Two sort of more perhaps minor questions that I have. One relates to the elevator. Cindy, so you had referenced that some of the elevators were not yet at the point that capital dollars could be used. What is the expected life of an elevator, and how far did we make it into it, I guess, with some of those? Like, what's the, how far off was that?
So it's a typical 20-year lifespan. And it's a 20-year requirement for any capital funding from the state. It has to be more than 20 years before you can request funding to replace a system. Most of these are in the 17 and 18 year range. Highlandtown is actually over 20, but it's in that original building, and they consider that as part of, even though the original building wasn't done, they consider that as part of the renovation that was done through 21st Century. So that's why they're not considering it as eligible. But everything else, and the repair shop, I should say, is not, because it's a non-academic building, so it's not eligible for capital either. We're not allowed to use capital funds on buildings that don't house students. But the rest of them are in the 17 to 18 year range, so they're pretty close.
I appreciate that. And then second question, as it relates to the air conditioning, I know that there were a number of other buildings that also had some issues at the start of the year. I'm thinking back to Western specifically. Can you speak a little bit to either those as known issues or, that they, I guess, speak to that a little bit more.
Yeah, so when we started that air conditioning initiative, when we did the high schools, what we did was the funding we received for the vertical package units for the high schools was based on a utilization of the building. So, for example, if Western was only utilized at 70% at the time when we requested the funding for the vertical package units for that building, we were only able to air condition 70% of the classrooms because that was how the funding was. We are in the midst of, and their utilization has increased, and some of the high schools, I will say, expand typically beyond, for different, because you want to offer greater offerings, of classes that might not have then a full roster of students in them. So we typically do use, it's very similar to the whole Patterson being overutilized, because, you have all these offerings at high schools that you want to have, but then you need to have the classrooms to support it. So Western has the classrooms to support it, but since they would be smaller class sizes doing that, all those classrooms were not able to be air conditioned. We are in the midst of now going backwards and going back to those schools. Now, Western's going to get full air conditioning through its renovation, its total renovation. But some of the other schools like Mervo, for example, is going to be one that will be installing additional units in as they actually come out of places like Frederick Douglass, because Frederick Douglass won't need those units any longer because we're doing a full renovation and therefore installing central air conditioning. So we're now actually going backwards into those other buildings and making sure that every classroom has them, and then figuring out ways to support the cafeterias and the auditoriums and the gyms. But we were just, honestly, the air conditioning, we were trying to meet that air conditioning mandate. And, this gets you to the end, and now we have to go backwards and start backfilling some of those other spaces and needs.
Question. So does this approach address all areas with regards to utilization, or are we now approving that all teaching spaces will have air conditioning across the board, whether utilization is high or low?
So in these particular 9 buildings, since it's not state funded and we therefore don't have to follow the utilization requirement for how that funding is appropriated, these particular 9 buildings is all teaching spaces that we'll be installing air conditioning in. And then, like I said, these units will be ones that we could then repurpose into other schools also, because there's also the, instances where certain units could still go down. Just because we have a unit in doesn't mean that it remains operational 100% of the time. Things happen, a system, breaks that we have to get a replacement piece for. These units that we're putting in these 9 buildings will also be units that can be repurposed across the district should that happen.
And I just wanted to add a little bit to what Cindy said, to also just remind folks that many of these solutions and the solutions we're doing now are not vertical package units, Cindy, right?
They're-
There's something else.
Yeah, they're the technical, they're called PTACs.
Okay, but I'm assuming they have the similar limitation, like many of the buildings that we air conditioned, they didn't get new, the vast majority did not get new HVAC systems. They got vertical package units, or now these PTACs, I think she just called them.
Mhm.
But I think both with the PTACs, I'm guessing, Cindy, and I know for the VPUs, they don't do larger spaces. So
Yes, that's correct.
gymnasiums are not air conditioned in those buildings. Hallways are not air conditionings, libraries, auditoriums. So just want to be clear that there are some spaces that students are in that are not air conditioned. This is not the ideal solution. It is the solution with the resources that we have that we could do economically to achieve that. When Dr. Santelisa started, there were 75 schools that did not have air conditioning. So now we're down to these last few. And so it's miraculous work on the part of the team to have done that. And these solutions were very creative solutions, but they really are not what the solution should be for young people, just to be clear. Our schools should be fully air conditioned for all of our students in all of our spaces. And to add on to like the Western problem, and Cindy said this, part of the reason why schools have been able to spread out is because of the Kerwin funding. So, for the first time, they had additional resources to add some of the programming they always should have had. And so as they've added that programming, they went into spaces that we hadn't utilized before, not because we wouldn't have wanted to, but because we didn't have the resources to have the programming that students should have had before. So that was definitely evident in those high schools. It's been true in all of our buildings. The air conditioning issue hasn't been as much of a problem, but we are seeing that schools that we thought were kind of at the right utilization rate before are starting to feel crowded because they were at the right utilization for programming that was not sufficient for what young people should have, because we didn't have the resources. So now as we actually start to have the resources to have that programming, they're starting to feel tight. So just more context than you wanted, but I just feel like it's always important to give that context about the reality of what our young people are experiencing.
No, that's appreciated. It was needed, because that was my next question. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, and similar to some of the other comments we've made, just the amount that has been accomplished and been done, is commendable. And thank you all for the hard work that goes into that, and thinking, broadly about all the different needs and underfunding, historic, and addressing those. It's a lot, but thank you for how far you have brought things to date and for the plans that are going forward. I imagine that concludes these items on the agenda. Any last, Mary Ann Cox, any last things here for 202 or 203, the supplemental appropriations? Okay. Dr. Judkins, as I recall, we have no items for public comment. Just confirming that is that's the case.
Correct.
And let's move on to the next item on the agenda, procurement. The procurement agenda 3.01. Who will be reading that? There we go. Okay.
Good morning, Operations Committee. I'm Shabray Matthews, Director of Procurement, and there are 6 items on the agenda for your consideration. Turn my volume up. Okay, first up is 11.01 Schoolworks LLC. The Office of the Chief of Staff requests the board's approval of a contract with Schoolworks to provide project management and conduct school effectiveness review visits and appeals for 18 schools going through the operator renewal process. The estimated total amount of the contract is $329,700. The contract term is February 1st, 2024 through June 30th, 2024. 13.01 Premier Inc. Doing business as U.S. Foods Inc. The Chief Financial Officer requests the board's approval to increase the contract with Premier Inc. to provide and deliver frozen and refrigerated food products, USDA commodities, and dry canned goods for city schools, food and nutrition cafeterias. from $10 million annually to $13 million annually, an increase of $3 million annually. The term of the contract is June 1st, 2019 through May 31st, 2027.
Commissioner Reed?
Just a simple question. It's up 30%. Is that a function of inflation, or what's the dynamic to make it go up by $3 million?
So Liz, is there a specific reason for this increase? I believe Liz is on.
This is Monique from Food Nutrition Services.
Okay, hey Mo.
Hi. Yeah, so the price increase is due to the price increases for food, just year over year, and of course, including COVID. So we've seen an increase in just due to packaging and then the overall cost of food, whether it be beef, chicken, and vegetables and things like that.
That seems pretty onerous to me, but I mean, I look at inflation numbers and 30% that's a lot over 1 year. So just letting you know. I mean, you can look at any inflation measure. Nothing's at 30% or close to 30%.
Yeah,
I could be the lone wolf, but I'm just saying what I know about economics and finance.
Yeah, so maybe the action item on this one is, as it comes in front of the full board, examining to make sure that there's full clarity on if that is solely inflation. Is that inflation that's occurring across the sector? Are there other providers that would not have such a steep increase in prices? Some of those things. So as it comes before the full board, being able to speak to some of that question more fully, I would imagine is helpful. Commissioner Reed, does that sound like what you're looking for?
It just scares me because that could be a trend. And if you start at a 30% increase and you go incremental from that, even 5% changes. I mean, it's real money. And right now, with a question mark about Kirwan, ESSER dollars going away, we have to be really deliberative in terms of how we spend money.
Commissioner Reed and Coy, Chris Doherty, CFO, I certainly agree that 30%, if it's only ascribable to inflation, is 6-7 times kind of what we're seeing as the current inflation rate. So without guessing, I'll circle back with Monique and Liz Marquetta and see whether I know food has had bigger jumps than in some sectors, but 30 is way out of whack. So we'll do a little bit of homework between this meeting and the next meeting and see whether there's more to the story there. But one thing in the meantime I can let you know is that food, nutrition, and finance, we don't just we definitely don't just say, oh well, inflation. So I don't know the backstory on this particular item, but food and nutrition in particular, they fight quite hard for much smaller kind of, given how tight they don't even have any margins. It's not so much a margin, but it's already food costs and paper and plastic and other things are already quite high. They're getting squeezed. So we'll find out more and either give some feedback in the interim or at the absolute latest, be ready to talk about it at the next meeting.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Don't go anywhere because I'm going to ask you about a question in the next one too.
Okay.
Commissioner Coy, do you want to see the updates in the actual letter via email or?
Yeah, Commissioner Reed, would you like those provided via email, or would you like to hear them spoken to during the? Would you like to poll the question during the board consent agenda review?
I defer to you and Ms. Matthews and Chief Doherty.
Let's start with the email. If we could have an update that sort of provides that and see if that addresses it. And if not, we can speak more to it during the public board meeting. But thank you for following up with an email.
Okay, all right, so we'll follow up email first.
And to the full operations committee here. So including vice chair or chair of the committee, Roberts.
Yes, okay.
Next.
I'm sorry, another question?
No, I just said next, I think 1402, 1401.
Okay, so next item is 1401, Avanti Inc. The Chief Information Technology Officer requests the board's approval to extend the contract term and increase the estimated total contract amount with Avanti Inc. to continue to provide IT service management by upgrading the capacity to our existing heat system to include an IT asset management solution to manage 210,000 district device assets. The board is requested to approve a contract extension through June 30th, 2028, as well as increase the estimated total contract amount from $180,000 to $2,060,000. $10.74, an increase of $1,880,000, $10.74.
Any questions from Commissioner Reed or Mohammed?
Absolutely. I guess my question to Avanti is it's multifaceted. I guess one question I have to throw out to both Chief Tommy and Chief Dougherty. One, my first question is, this is a global question. This is a non-compete. So of our non-compete contracts, what percentage of all our contracts are non-compete? And how much is the non-compete of our contracts? How much we spend on non-compete contracts? The other is theoretical. Okay, what do we save by going non-compete versus WMBE in terms of our contracts? And lastly, this is something in terms of page 9 and the visionary thing for me and the board. COVID-related funding is going away. We have no definitive funding for a lot of activities because we don't have Kerwin yet. So everything we talk about in terms of spending, we never talk about decreases. We only talk about increases. But ESSER's going away. Kerwin's a question mark. So what are there any things this committee needs to know or the board needs to know in terms of headwinds that we have in terms of spending going forward? And I think this is probably the committee to talk about that, but I'm just worried about headwinds going forward where you say, hey, we have a lot more assigned balance needs. We have a lot more unassigned balance needs because money's going away and expenses are going up. Because they never go down. Expenses never go down. So,
yeah.
Chief Jones, can I jump in first before you talk about the specific contract?
Okay.
Commissioner Reed, again, I thank you for giving voice to this at a public meeting. Costs never do go down. Or at least, on their own. I will say that for over a year now, at the CEO's very clear, energetic direction, we have been organization-wide preparing for managing the end of ESSER. And we don't, because the issues involved are so serious and important, we don't, but the term that you will hear people use is the ESSER cliff, right? That the huge amount of ESSER money is going to end and you're going to, quote, fall off the ESSER cliff. And FY24, the year we're in, is the last year of ESSER. So in the last year of ESSER, we were in the neighborhood of having $120 million of ESSER money that's doing things and buying things. And from well before the beginning of FY24, the CEO and her team have been looking at what's going to happen when the music stops. And so there will be cuts. In other words, of the $120 million in activities and goods that are being funded by ESSER, some will continue, and there will be general funds identified for those. The majority of those amounts will go away, and that'll mean activities that are happening will no longer happen, and goods and services that are being purchased will cease. And it's not an easy lift because, as you say, it's usual that when things are added, there was a reason why they were added. They made sense to be added, and they don't, immediately become superfluous. But we've gone through that process. Now, what we will have is we right now estimate about $32 to $40 million increase for FY25 due to Kerwin issues. Like our Kerwin funding. Our funding essentially now is Kerwin funding. So we think we're going to get about between 30 and 40 million more dollars in general funds. We're going to take that $120 million, which is a very, large figure, and the majority of it is going to go away. But the best and most important parts of that 120 will stay. And at the CEO's direction, what we're doing is two main things. We will assign the new money that we expect to get from ESSER, from Kerwin, to those activities. And we'll also take a look at all of our other general funds, because the only way we're going to make that delta work is by looking across the board at not just new things that were being done with COVID money or ESSER money, but taking a look across the board. So in that sense, there will be $70–80 million of cuts that will happen. Importantly, when we started ESSER-related activities, we always tried to stress to the people involved, these are COVID-related and ESSER-related activities. These are not permanent activities. And in some cases, they will continue, but those are more the exception rather than the rule. And one successful experience we had in this that you're familiar with and the other commissioners are familiar with, we ramped up very heavily to do COVID-related work, our best in nation asymptomatic testing and that whole gigantic thing. We hired school-based health coordinators, and those folks were fantastic. And then they graduated out. A few of them moved over to do permanent jobs, but the vast majority, they came, they did their job, they did it well, and they cycled out. And there's going to be that as well. And that, coupled with our healthy fund balance, we think is going to keep us from being in the situation that some of the other districts are in, where it's not going to be as relatively smooth as what I just laid out.
Thank you.
And let me jump into the first part of your question. You asked about the non-competes. This particular contract is deceptive. It's a non-compete, and it sounds like we went out and awarded it to someone new, and we did not. Avanti is the name of the company that has the current contract for the heat system. They changed their name. They consolidated, they purchased. So it's not a new company. It is, they had additional modules to do the asset management, something we've said we want to do for the last 5 years, but never did. Well, with the ESSER funds remaining, we've been planning this for 2 years now. We can purchase the modules as well as the configuration support we need to configure the modules. So that's why I say it's very deceptive, because everyone sees Avanti and they're like, what do you mean Avanti is a non-compete? It's only because we're expanding that service that's already, the use of that company that's already there. So it's a little bit deceptive in terms of the way it comes across.
Making sure that I also understand one aspect of it. It talks about there being an increase in year one due to some of the installation, but then the numbers in the subsequent years are larger. So I guess in terms of just understanding, what is it referencing by there being an increase in year one if that's the lower number?
Yeah, I have to admit that's a little bit confusing to me too. I didn't realize it said it, but the year one cost is the purchase of the module, we're adding a module, so there's a cost to it. And then there is a cost to do configuration and setup. That's a cost. And then we have to pay for the module ongoing. And the tricky part about asset management across the board, as well as many other things, when you have more assets, I think earlier in the earlier presentation, we said something about 200,000. Was that what we said, Director Russell? Around
Yes.
200. So by adding 200,000 assets to track, we have to pay like a per unit cost for that. That's the reason the out year costs go up. I didn't know it was so, I don't remember it being so large to catch your attention, but that's what it is that ongoing cost to track the assets. And this is we have to do this to satisfy some audit findings as well as just good management practice. So the cost is going to come somewhere. And I will attest to Chief Doherty's statement a second ago. The CEO has taken her pound of flesh out of my budget to accommodate these things and, the drop off at ESSER.
May I add something to that, Chief?
Sure.
The reason year one seems to be lower because of the fact that we've already paid into this previous year. So that what we've already paid was an offset. So that made year one appears to be lower, but actually year one is in the 500,000 mark.
Thanks,
Okay.
Director. I knew it was something. I couldn't remember why it was lower, but yeah, thank you. Other questions for me particularly?
Commissioner Reed, did that answer your questions broadly that you'd asked?
Yeah, I mean, thanks for raising that, Commissioner Coy. Maybe you want to put in the reword the increase, because it confused me just like it confused Commissioner Coy in terms of like having a base of 500,000 by Mr. Russell. That helps a lot in terms of looking at the base costs in the product versus the services that are in the back end.
Yep.
It's like, why would that continue to go up? Because the services are going up.
Yes.
We'll update that. We'll put those two extra sentences in there.
And also, commissioners, the 200,000 devices, those are OS devices, but we can also add non-OS devices unlimited. Yes, for
Meaning
inventory.
computer and telephone and devices that have
Yes.
operating systems, but you could manage non operating system based.
That's correct. That's correct.
And we plan to. And that's part of the plan, headsets, power cords, some of those kinds of
laptop cards.
Some of those kinds of things, yeah.
One other note, Dr. Juckins, if you could take note of Commissioner Reed's question relating to the non-competitive solicited bids. I do think that that's a good question to be sort of understood. I know, especially as we have an annual compliance report that comes to this committee, I forget right when it is, but just want to make sure that that question is more fully explored and has the time and space to try to understand like what are the benefits that we see broadly from that or the drawbacks. Because obviously there's a reason that there's limits to it and not wanting to skirt around those, I guess, unless there's a benefit for or rationale, I should say. And yeah, so Dr. Juckins, did you feel like you captured that question that Commissioner Reed had asked?
I will reach out to him specifically. I've got part of it, but I want to make sure I have it full.
Okay. Chief Doherty, thank you for your comments there. I certainly have seen over the past year plus that the degree to which thoughtful restraint has been applied to any spending of ESSER money is what is helping this transition not feel so dramatic and painful as I know other districts are experiencing. And in Maryland, the Kirwan, sort of the timing of the Kirwan transition has also sort of softened or mitigated some of that as things have changed generally. But it's only because of the hard work that the whole team has taken to being restrained and thoughtful. And I know Chief Perkins-Cohen, especially in that mix of ensuring allocation of resources in that way. So thank you all for for softening that known transition that was going to happen, such that it's not like whiplash for everybody in the system. Okay, next item on the procurement. Yep, next item.
Okay, next is 1402 consulting and technical services contract. The Chief Information Technology Officer requests the board's approval to increase the estimated annual amount of the piggyback contract with the state of Maryland to continue to provide temporary staff resources to fulfill IT requirements, including the ERP implementation and future IT projects. The board is requested to increase the estimated annual amount from 1.2 million to 4 million annually, an increase of $2.8 million. The contract term is July 25th, 2018 through April 21st, 2028.
Any questions?
I promise this is my last question. I promise. Chief Tommy, you're asking us for $4 million a year for the next 5 years. What are the students and families and system buying for $4 million a year for the next 5 years?
What you get is, I think all of you are aware how difficult it is to find some of the technology talent we need to implement the big systems we're doing, but not just the big systems, just everyday running of the Infinite Campus, running of the help desk. So what we do is we deploy temporary resources, and we try to do it very strategically. For example, I need someone to help with the new MSDE report that they bought Power Schools, and they mandated that all of the LEAs had to do this whole new system. So what we do, we use temporary employees that we know we can bring on board, get up to speed, help us build the system because our staff is consumed with AMP. Or we have a buildup of the help desk where we need to bring on, like every August, September, October, and every April, May, and June, we have to increase the help desk staff to take the surge. When school starts, there's a huge surge of calls to the help desk and that type of stuff, everything you can imagine. So what this is, it's not like a 1 year increase. It's extended for several years to just keep funding that contract so that we can quickly get those people and get them on board. So
you may not use it.
Yeah.
My question is, you may not use it because you're saying, Vernon Reid, I need 20 people per year at $200,000 per year. That's a lot of money, roughly.
It's probably more like
40 people at $100,000 a year.
Yeah, I say it's probably more like we're going to use 25 people for 75. We're going to use a couple really high-end technical talent for $200K each. So that it's not one group of people. It's a very varied mix.
It's a lot of people.
For example, well, it is a lot of people, but remember, it's over the next 4 years. What was the end date, Shabri?
April 21st, 2028.
28. Yeah, but part of that number is also including what was already spent. Because we're extending it. This isn't a new contract, right, Shabri? This is an extension of a contract already in place.
This is a contract that we're already piggybacking through 2028. And then the request is really for contract capacity, just in case, you need, so that you can meet your needs of the district.
Yeah, and it is, you're right, Commissioner. We may not spend it, but let me give you a very real example. I have Director Digay on here right now. We tried to get a person in to do with that very thing that I just talked about, the MSDE report that they mandated. It took us 4 months to get the person in just to find them. We tried to hire someone for a couple, 3 years, and it didn't work. So we had to go to the temporary solutions who, put a price on top of the price. Just to be able to keep functions the way I can do it. We always try to go the cheap route first so that I don't have to ask for money. But, you know, sometimes we just don't have that option. It's just not available to us with the talent we're talking about.
So, Chief, with spending this at this level, do we offset anything in the future that we will not be spending? Similar to the heat system that we're using, we're contracting an outside company, but when you have this level of staff, I would hope that maybe we would be building our own system where we would no longer have to outsource certain things that will cost us money in the future. Is there any space for this level of growth?
So we would love to do exactly the same thing. We have struggled to do that. And let me give you a very real example that is near and dear to my heart. I need to build a project management office within OIT to track all the projects we do. ESSER clobbered us in terms of the amount of projects. Every week we were getting requests to build something new. I have tried for a solid year to hire the person that I need to drive my PMO and could not find someone who would take the salaries that we could offer. We finally found a person who came in through a temporary contracting agent. They had no interest in doing it permanently. They wanted only to do a 1 or 2 year gig and do the work. And unfortunately, in this particular case, we couldn't even bring that person on board because we'd hit the limit of the temporary contracting facility. So when I ask for these funds, I'm asking for things that have room to grow so that I don't come back so often. And, you know, whether that's a good strategy or not, that's up to you commissioners. But the amount of time we spend, you know, tripping over ourselves over these types of issues is just phenomenal. That's why I have to give credit to Director Matthews. She's tolerated a lot from me as we go through these frustrations I'm trying to deliver and I can't get the bodies on place. So yeah, is there room? Would we like to? We would love to grow our staff. But the good part about the temporary ones, particularly when you're doing something like a fusion, you know, like an AMP project, is we bring them in to help backfill for the people who are on AMP, because the AMP will stay, right? So we want them to learn and stay. So when MSD walks in and drops this new requirement on us, I'm not going to pull my people off AMP that has to go a long time, go years. I'm going to say, let's get some temporary staff in here. We can get up to speed and let them do the work, and then they go away. So it's a balance. I mean, it's a struggle. It's a strategy, and that's what we're trying to do. As Chief Doherty said, I mean, the CEO and the COS are very much on my case about the money I'm spending because, we all know that we don't have unlimited funds. So we just have to be really smart about how we combine things to be the smartest way to spend and get the work done, rather than, because we can spend hundreds of thousands of dollars just chasing this.
Commissioner Reed, is your question here, you like been addressed, or Commissioner Mohammed?
I'm good. I'm good.
You're good. And Commissioner Mohammed?
Good on my end.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chief Tommy.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda.
Next item is 1501 Patriot Pool Services, LLC. The Chief Operating Officer requests the board's approval of a competitively solicited contract with Patriot Pool Service, LLC to provide repairs and maintenance services to swimming pools located within city schools properties on an as-needed basis. The contract term is March 1st, 2024 through February 28th, 2027, with 1 2-year renewal option. The estimated annual contract amount is $250,000.
Any questions? Okay, next.
Next and final is 1502 Morton Salt Inc. The Chief Operating Officer requests the board's approval to piggyback the state of Maryland's competitively bid requirements contract with Morton Salt Inc. to provide bulk de-icing materials for city schools. The contract term is January 24th, 2024 through August 31st, 2026 with 2 one-year renewal options, and the estimated total contract amount is $200,000.
I don't know if you planned this one for today, Director Matt, but certainly is a timely one for today. Huh? Any
Definitely
questions?
timely.
Commissioners Reed or Mom, I won't hold you to your no more questions, Commissioner Reed. If you do have a question, feel free to ask. Okay, well, this brings us to the end of the procurement items, I believe. And thank you for all the work that goes into getting those all ready. Any additional items, Dr. Judkins, that we should cover before ending today's operations meeting?
I do not have anything here.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for joining. Thank you all for the work and the flexibility of it's virtual today. We appreciate that and the technology that enables that. Thank you everyone and have a safe rest of your day. This is end of call.
Thank you.
Thank you. Enjoy your day.
Thank you.